It is extraordinary, isn't it? We've seen Matildanomics with the great economic benefits of the World Cup and the Matildas in general, and the great support for the Socceroos. But financially, it seems like the way the A-League is structured, with the split between Football Australia and the the organisation that runs the A-League, has made it a little bit difficult financially despite the on-field success.
Bruce, you're a former player and you've worked in football administration for an A-League club. It's got to be exciting to see people turning out to see the Matildas as if it's a Taylor Swift concert. But is the broader sport here losing its way? What's gone wrong?
Look, it's interesting, and picking up off what Tim was saying, you know, it's been interesting to see the divergence in financial benefits, the divergence in eyeballs, the divergence in performance overall when you look at Football Australia on one hand and the A-Leagues on another. Once upon a time, they all used to be connected under Football Australia, all as one. Now we have two separate administrations, for one for the national teams and the other for the local professional game in the A-Leagues, the men and the women, obviously. So, you know, there's questions to be answered, no doubt. When you look at the finances of the A-Leagues, they had huge injections of cash from Silver Lake, a private equity firm that's, you know, well accustomed to investing in sport, as well as from Channel 10, Paramount Plus as a broadcaster. So, you know, there's questions that will need to be answered from the A-Leagues, and there's no doubt that A-League clubs are a little bit concerned about what sort of dividend they're going to get from the league. Understanding is that that's about to get slashed, and, you know, obviously a bit of disgruntled people on the back of where all that money that was invested up front has gone.
Was it a mistake for the A-League to gain its independence from Football Australia back in 2020? Tim?
Well, it's interesting. In a way, to be fair to soccer association football, it does have to compete with three other codes. I mean, in most countries in the world, soccer has, you know, the whole game itself because it's the main sport. It's very unusual in Australia that you've got to compete with the AFL, Rugby League and Rugby Union. So they have a tough competitive environment. Having said that, I agree with Bruce that the split off actually made it very difficult because it was one happy family, or one family at least, under Frank Lowy when he took over the game. But now some of the promises with private equity haven't come off, and it's quite hard for the A-League to, you know, steer the ship on its own, you know, without the support of the coffers of the Matildas and to a lesser extent the Socceroos. So I think the divorce in administration has actually made it harder, when they were hoping that they were giving A-League its independence and it would give them more autonomy and make it easier. Ironically, it's gone the other way.
Bruce, was it a mistake? Should it not have happened?
Look, time will tell, and hindsight's always 20/20. What you can say about the A-Leagues is the players are certainly doing their jobs and they're being picked up by some of the biggest clubs in the world. No one can say anything negative about the on-field product. It's been phenomenal. The season that just recently went past, both the men's and the women's, was exciting right until that last round. Cracker finals, campaigns. You look at the viewership on the TV, the broadcasters doing a fantastic job. More eyeballs watching it consecutively over the last 3 years. It doesn't leave much else other than, you know, someone to really put the microscope on the administration, as I said earlier. A lot of money invested in, both from the broadcaster, Silver Lake, owners of these franchises as well. They've invested significant sums of money, and, you know, to consistently, you know, be less and less, if you like, in the eyes of the public, as Tim was saying, competing with the other marquee sports in AFL and NRL in particular, one would think you're stronger together, and that means A-Leagues, Socceroos, Matildas, all as one unit, under one administration, under one board. But, you know, the clubs wanted to go it alone, and time will tell whether they can right the ship and dig themselves out of this little bit of a hole.
Tim, what did the league do with the money from the private equity investment? Where has it gone?
It's a very good question, and I mean, I would agree with Bruce that there's nothing wrong with what the players have been doing and the clubs. I mean, they've been, putting the most exciting brand of the game that they can. What's interesting too is that when you look at crowds, particularly in the women's game, I mean, the A-League women's were still getting bigger crowds for the season than netball and AFLW, and by international comparisons, quite reasonable crowds. But at the end of the day, you've got to look at the administration. I mean, when you think about, my own son's sport, play cricket or Aussie rules for Maroubra Saints here in Sydney, dues are around $200, $250. You get $100 back from the New South Wales government, while soccer parents I talk to are paying $3,000, dollars a year with a lot of fancy coaching. So not only I think has it been harsh on the players, but it's been really harsh on the parents who pay pretty big money in junior soccer to have their boys and girls play, and yet the A-League's been losing money. So it seems that to me that like in the AFL and the National Rugby League, at the top they run very well, and it sort of trickles down to pretty cheap fees for juniors, particularly in Auskick and AFL. While in soccer it seems that the bottom, it's like a reverse pyramid. The bottom are paying big dues for young kids, but yet there doesn't seem to be much money at the top. So it's almost the reverse of how it should really be. So that's Bruce is quite right to ask those questions.
Bruce, do you think that the grassroots players are indeed subsidising the top tier of the game?
Look, it's important to sort of categorise that, and this is what happens when you have a fragmented game, is that the juniors all the way through to the Socceroos and national teams, that's Football Australia. The A-Leagues are an entity in and of themselves that are just the A-Leagues clubs, right? So they get no dividend from the grassroots, two complete separate organisations, operations, funding models. So is football too expensive in this country? Hell yes. My son plays under 10s, and we also pay thousands of dollars for him to play. He's lucky. He's got a great coach, but there's hundreds of thousands of parents out there paying good money to have their kids just coached by the mum or dad who's got a bit of time up their sleeves to put on a training session that's really passionate about the game and are great volunteers, but at the end of the day, they're probably not best placed to teach the kids the best parts of the game. No disrespect to them. You take your kid to swimming, you're getting a qualified swimming instructor that's teaching them a skill that's going to help them avoid danger and save lives. So, there is a real issue in the game of football at the grassroots level really becoming a game of the haves, and those that don't have thousands of dollars per child to spend on kicking a ball around a couple of times a week will go off into other sports that are better funded at the top. So the TV rights are such that it does allow it to trickle down. Football's the other way around. There's so many participants. There's millions of participants. It's the highest participative sport, team sport in the country. At the same time, it's got relatively small government funding and TV rights in comparison to your AFLs and your NRLs. So
let's talk about the broadcast deal for a moment, because you've both spoken to the keen participation here in Australia in the game. Are people watching? What's gone wrong when it comes to broadcast?
Well, can I start with that? I mean, it's partially, if you look at what people play and what people watch, if you want to watch the best, the best of the best in the world with rugby league and Aussie rules and cricket, you watch it in Australia. Carlton and Collingwood and the Sydney Swans and all the rugby league teams and the cricketers are the best in the world. The thing about soccer, of course, is that if you're go down the beach like I did this morning, you'll see kids in Liverpool and Barcelona tops. You won't see as many A-League tops because it's just, it's not the best in the world. And I think what happens is a lot of kids will stream, the great leagues in Europe and the English Premier League, and a lot of that's where they do their broadcasting. Whilst it's very hard for the A-League to get the same sort of eyeballs, even when, as Bruce said, they're playing quality.
Why is that, Bruce?
Look, I think it comes down to marketing. Notwithstanding, the broadcast audience has been increasing year on year since the league did go independent. But I think it's about getting front and centre in front of the general public, not just the die-hard fans. And to do that, you've got to invest and spend a lot of money, not as a broadcaster, but as the A-League's clubs. And I think they've just struggled to muscle into what is a very competitive sporting landscape in Australia, fighting for limited eyeballs. But
Football Australia, now completely separate to the Australian Professional League, is planning a second-tier competition to begin next year. Tim, do you think this is important in terms of generating a pipeline of players to the A-League and ultimately the national teams?
Well, I think it does, because that's where it all began, with very strong regional leagues. I've written a lot about the Tassie Devils joining the AFL and the economics of it, and people from soccer clubs in Hobart are also writing to me saying, can you write about us as well? So it's obviously very important for regional areas and places where soccer's had traditional strength, like the Hunter Valley. So I think it helps, but probably like rugby union, they have struggled with the provincial national sort of split, which has been not the other codes haven't had quite the same difficulty. But I think providing good pathways is part of the story, and I think that's why, for instance, the AFL has looked to including Tasmania in their league and eventually the Northern Territory, and Rugby League has now looked at having Papua New Guinea join the NRL. So they're obviously looking at pathways, and obviously soccer is very mindful of its own pathways for that reason.
Bruce, could the second tier ultimately rival the A-League, or do you think Football Australia might be doing this in part to ensure there is indeed a national competition if the A-League folds?
No, I think it's a great add-on to have a national second-tier competition. The question's always been the long-term financial viability of such a competition, but Football Australia are keen to press ahead with it, and there's been a lot of interest from several clubs around the country, and I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing both for the A-Leagues as well as for other players who might not have the opportunity to be playing A-League at this point in time. It also gives them good exposure and a greater chance of joining an A-League club.
A key argument for a second-tier national league is to ultimately bring in promotion and relegation. But Bruce, do you think that can fly when private investors have stumped up big cash to own A-League clubs?
Look, there's all those rules around the licences and who's allowed to join the competition and who's not from an A-League perspective. Obviously, that's a bit of a barrier to entry, but promotion and relegation, it's probably some time off. It's a fantastic concept. We've seen that around the world of football. But if you look at the MLS, they've got about 38 teams, I think now. Still no promotion relegation there. So we're a fair way off, and the MLS is a very, very healthy league with significant pools of capital from their ownership groups. If you look at where the A-League's at now, promotion and relegation should be the goal, should be the aim. There still needs to be a lot more stability before you embark on that journey, in my opinion.
Tim,
that's interesting. I mean, because in a way, I think Bruce is right on the economic structure of it. But they're talking about promotion and relegation in the AFL as well, because people are saying, wow, you've got 19 teams with the Tassie Devils. Do you add Darwin as a Northern Territory top end side playing in Darwin and Alice Springs and maybe Cairns as well? So what about Norwood and North Adelaide and Southport, some of the clubs who have every right to be in the AFL as Port Adelaide, for instance. So it is interesting to see, can you add more excitement? We saw in what used to be the second division, it's now the first division in England, when they have a promotion match, it's actually quite exciting. And in a game like the NRL and the AFL, we only have one premiership and almost 20 teams competing with it. Having promotion and relegation sort of adds a bit of excitement at the other end of the table. So I think Bruce is right that for the sport, it's exciting. It's exciting for fans. It's just a question of can you make the licensing deals work, particularly in terms of investment.
And so, do you think commercial interests, particularly private ownership of the clubs and A-League, are creating a disconnect between the game and the fans?
Oh, I don't think that in and of itself is creating a disconnect. I think the fans are quite connected. They just feel a bit let down repeatedly, if I'm being brutally honest, from some of the decisions that are made in head office, and that turns some people away. That frustrates others. That leads others to go into follow other ventures, other sports, out of frustration. But what I think is that there really needs to be a concerted effort from all A-Leagues clubs and the players as well to really get into the grassroots and get into schools. And yes, there's a lot of grassroots players and a lot of schools to get around to, but you know, when I was playing in the A-League many years ago, back in 2006, 2008, I'm pretty sure it was in our contracts how many community appearances we had to do. I think there could be a lot more of that done to reconnect with younger people and fans, and then you've got to invest the big money to get your marketing right and to showcase a product. That there's no point having a fantastic on-field product if not enough people know about it. And at the moment, yes, people are watching, but not enough.
Tim?
Yeah, look, I think that's right. I mean, I feel sorry for the A-League fans for two reasons. One is they had all those decisions, you know, to have all the grand finals in Sydney that later got reversed, and they did those things to the medal, and I think that sort of would have robbed Central Coast of their great, you know, the great fairy tale they had this year with the treble. And secondly, the very bad behaviour by a few hooligans we saw in Melbourne and various incidents. It's really unfair to the true grassroots fans of of soccer in Australia. You know, they really get badly tarnished by some of the actions of a minority, which has been really hard on them. And I think Bruce is right in terms of schools. I remember my son and daughter's primary school in Sydney. The Sydney Swans would come 4 times a year. The Sydney Roosters once or twice, but they never saw an A-League club, and they certainly didn't see a rugby union club, mainly because they went to a government school. But certainly, you know, the Sydney Swans have done a great job in visiting schools, and also my son's junior club, the Swans, come every couple of months. So they've done a very good job as far as visiting schools goes.
One final question to end on. Where do you both see Australian soccer in 5 years from now? Will the A-League still be operating? First to you, Tim.
Look, I think Australian soccer is strong on the back of the Matildas in particular, and the Socceroos. And the fact that, you know, it is the world game. Even people who love Aussie rules and rugby league will get behind the Matildas and the Socceroos at World Cup time. So it's always got that international dimension. But I do think there's going to be a lot of change in the domestic game, and having people like Bruce involved would certainly, you know, improve that reform. So it's going to, you know, it's going to continue. But I still think the national teams are going to be greatly followed because, let's face it, Aussies, anyone in green and gold, from soccer to tiddlywinks to synchronised swimming, if there's a medal involved or, you know, World Cup, we'll get behind them.
Bruce, I'll get you to answer that. Keeping in mind that Tim touched on the strength of the women's game, it is the growth area. Should there also be some more female involvement in the administration of the game moving forward?
Look, you can always have better gender balance in sport. That's without question. But I will say the Matildas is the strongest sporting brand in the country, bar none. They've been phenomenal. The Socceroos have also been fantastic. They've just been overshadowed by the Matildas. That just speaks to how great the women have been. The domestic league is facing several severe challenges. There's no doubt about that. My personal preference would be for the domestic game as well as the national teams to be as one. I think they're more powerful together. But that which was the case. It's not anymore. Will we see that happen in 5 years' time? I don't know. There needs to be a bit more water under the bridge, perhaps. But you know, I think that the Football Australia have never been in a stronger position ever. They've gone consistently to World Cups. You know, the women at Paris have a good chance of winning a medal. Commercially doing fantastic. I think the Matildas have sold out 14 domestic games in a row, and we're not talking in stadiums of 15,000 people either. We're talking significant numbers, 50, 60, 70,000 seater stadiums. Football Australia's never been stronger. The A-Leagues has never been weaker. They've never been in a more precarious position. There really needs to be a lot of soul searching in order to right that ship. But in 5 years' time, if the game was operating as one, I think it'd be in the strongest possible place.
Bruce Djité, Tim Harcourt, terrific to talk to you both. Thank you.
Thank you.